Okay, we left off in chapter, I believe it is 15. Okay, and we're going to try to finish, which, 20 chapters? Oh, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 15, the Sabbatic year. Now, there is the regular Shabbat. Shabbat is the Hebrew way to say Sabbath. Sabbath is our English transliteration. All right. Okay, there is the 7 days, but there's also 7 years. Okay, and then when you get to 7 times 7, all right, then there's the Jubilee. All right, so it constantly is going in sevens. And of course, every time there's a Shabbat, what is the lesson to be learned? Daddy, why do we have the Sabbath day? And why do we have the Sabbath year? Because the Lord God purposed billions of years ago to make a cell and to start a little pond that would grow into a fish and that would crawl out of the... Is that what the lesson of Shabbat is? No. Okay. So every time, what is the lesson? Because the Lord God made the earth and all of us in 6 days. On the 7th day, He rested. So He preaches creation every time. Right? And also, and we went through the Sabbath and a lot of the great things, also about setting aside a day to rest and to be with the Lord and be with your family. It's a very important thing. All right? All right, so anyway, we went through a lot of that, but this is the Sabbatic year. Chapter 15, at the end of every 7 years you shall grant a remission of debts. And this is the manner of remission. Every creditor shall release what he has loaned to his neighbor. He shall not exact it or of his neighbor or his brother, because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed. So we have the Sabbatic, and we have the Jubilee, where all freedom, everything is set right. Everything is passed back to its original owners, right? But every 7 years is a cancellation of debts. What businessman wants to be a part of that society? Huh?
You're only going to have 6-year loans.
Exactly. And then the Lord deals with their heart attitude and trying to not make a deal because of it. All right? Anyway, we'll get to it. Because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed. Verse 3, from a foreigner you may exact it, but your hand shall release whatever of yours is with your brother. However, there shall be no poor among you, since the Lord will surely bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess. If only you listen obediently to the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully this commandment which I am commanding you today. He said there would be no poor if they completely listen. Of course they don't, and there is poor. All right? Verse 6. For the Lord your God shall bless you as He has promised you, and you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow, and you will rule over many nations. They will not rule over you. If there is a poor man with you, one of your brothers, in any of your towns and in your land which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not harden your heart, nor close your hand from your poor brother. But you shall freely open your hand to him, and shall generously lend him sufficient for his need in whatever he lacks. Beware lest there is a base thought in your heart. Is he dealing with the heart here? Yes. Saying, the 7th year, the year of remission is near, and your eye is hostile toward your poor brother. And you give him nothing, and he may cry to the Lord against you, and it will be sin in you. Wow. So, was that internal sin, or was that external sin? That was of the heart, wasn't it? That was what's needed, is circumcision of the heart. It was checking yourself and making sure that you are not basing your generosity on the Sabbatic year, right? And it was about generosity and compassion. Does that sound like the mean, cruel law, or does that sound like the law of love? Law of love. That's right. According to Galatians, the book where they try to make Paul slam the law, what does Paul say? And the law can be summed up because love is the fulfillment of the law, right? All right, but you see how if the poor man cries out against you because you wouldn't help him, the Lord will hear and it will become sin in you. See that? Remember how there's sin that we're unaware of, right? And that there was an offering for things that you don't even know that you're doing. Okay. Chapter 16. This is about the Passover. This is about some of the feasts and how they're supposed to certain regulations concerning them, future things. Verse 4. For 7 days no leaven shall be seen with you or in all your territory, and none of the flesh which you sacrifice on the evening of the first day shall remain overnight. So morning, that's about the Passover, right? Verse 6, but the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name, you shall sacrifice the Passover in the evening at sunset, at the time that you came out of Egypt. Now, so some of these regulations are concerning the future. This is all prophecy because they haven't even gotten in the land yet, and they haven't had a place where to establish the Lord's name yet. So Moses has already given them the regulations to what to do when that happens. You see? Verse 7, and you shall cook it and eat it in the place which the Lord your God chooses, and in the morning you are to return to your tents. 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord your God. You shall do no work on it. You shall count 7 weeks for yourself, and you shall begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put aside the sickle, the standing grain. Then you shall celebrate the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God with an attribute of freewill offering of your hand, which you shall give, just as the Lord your God blesses you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, and your son, your daughter, your male and female servant, and the Levite is in your town, and the stranger, and the orphan, and the widow who are in your midst, in the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish his name. That's why it's behind me, right? Did the Lord choose a place to establish his name forever? Does it still hold his name? Yep, still does, doesn't it? Can you talk about Jerusalem without talking about the Lord, God of Israel? You can't talk about Jerusalem without talking about Jesus. Right? And of course, why the enemy hates it so much. All right. So, and I hope you all get to go there someday. Because I have to say, when I went to Israel, it totally changed the way I read Scripture and my understanding level. Just it seems like it wouldn't be that big a deal, but it is. I don't know. Everything became real to me. Jerusalem, the Temple Mount became real. When I got to go to Galilee and got to see it, it just, just seeing the walks that they had to do from Galilee to Jerusalem, going down to Jericho, and the Dead Sea, seeing it. The evidence for all the world to see, according to Peter, of God's judgment concerning Sodom and Gomorrah, but everyone wants to pretend like it never happened. But Peter says you can go see it. It's there, right? That's in 2 Peter, right? It's a big hole in the earth. That's where it is. There's just, I just hope you all get to go there someday. I mean, I know things are really heating up and things could be ablaze with war soon, and who knows, but anyway, if you ever get an opportunity, take it. I'll just tell you that. Okay? It is worthwhile. All right. Where am I here? Let's go down to, I already read that. So let's go to verse 16:16. 3 times in a year all your male shall appear before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses, at the feast of unleavened bread, and at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of booths, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord God, which he has given you. You shall appoint for yourself judges and officers in all your towns, which the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not distort justice. You shall not be partial. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. Wow. Justice and only justice you shall pursue, that you may live and possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you. So does the Lord care about justice and righteous judgment? Yes, he does. Okay, so, but I see the 3 times a year. That hasn't happened yet. This is all future because they haven't had a place that they've been wandering. This is all prophecy concerning the future. And when the Lord establishes a place, which temple, then every male in Israel has to make the journey 3 times a year. Now, many times their family would come with them, right? Which they could. That's the point. But sometimes they couldn't. Sometimes your wife is very pregnant, or it's, there's reasons why it couldn't be everybody. Is that right? It would be harder. Sometimes it wouldn't work out that way. But a lot of times they would bring their families, but it's not their God. You would think, well, why is it just the men? Well, actually, in the Lord's wisdom, there's certain times where it would be tough to bring if you got 10 kids and 2 babies, and right. It could be hard. Anyway, so but they must go, and 3 times a year, and it's a big trek. But they have to go up to the temple. That's where they would always come to the temple. All right, you're wondering if you're reading through Jesus, you're reading through the Gospels. I said reading through Jesus. Reading through the Gospels, that works. Okay, and you notice that there are multiple times going up to Jerusalem. Right? Well, that's because 3 times a year they have to go up anyway. Right? So, without that, when you when you read through, you notice now, even now, though there's a lot more for you to learn, there's still tons more left, but even now, you start reading through the Gospels and you're going to start seeing it and getting things you didn't get before. That you read 10 times, but just never really made sense. Now it does. All right? Okay. So, moving on. Well, I already read verse 19, 20, 21, 19 and 20, some of my favorite. The Lord cares about justice and righteous judgment. It's a big deal to him. Okay, chapter 17, verse 2. If there is found in your midst in any of your towns which the Lord your God is giving you, a man or a woman who does what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God by transgressing his covenant, and has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or of sun and the moon, or any of the heavenly host, which I have not commanded, and if it is told you, and you have heard of it, and you shall inquire thoroughly, and behold, if it is true, the thing is certain that it is detestable thing has been done in Israel, then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has done this evil deed to your gates, that is, the man or the woman, and you shall stone them to death. On the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, he who is to die shall be put to death. He shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. You can get the death penalty in our culture, in our system, based on 1 witness. You can get the death penalty based on circumstantial evidence, can't you? All right, so, but what's very important is that the Lord told them to carefully investigate. They were charged to carefully investigate. And if there is witnesses, it has to be more than 1 in order to put them to death, and then they would have to be the first ones to throw the stone. Right. They couldn't wipe their hands of it and walk away. Right? You see God's system. They may see to us from our culture, we're like, we let serial killers sit on death row for 20 years and make movies. You think we're full of justice? That's not justice. See, the liberal world thinks because they're God haters and they don't have the understanding of the Lord, that's humanism, is what that is. The fact that you would let serial killers live is humanism. It's like, well, no, you can't kill anyone. Well, actually, no, yeah. When you take that off the table, you ask for more to happen. The serial killers couldn't play out their whole little thing in the court system and drag on for years and get all this stuff. And if they would be quickly executed, all right, guess what? There'd be less serial killers.
That's right.
You know that? Mm-hmm. There would be.
Be a deterrent.
Mm-hmm. It's meant to be a deterrent, not to the more I guess some people you would say see that as a great thing about our society. It's not. Now, we are in some ways we try to apply 1925 American judicial system was much more based on the Bible than ours now. You know what I mean? And they tried, our original system did try to implement a lot of this. Okay, that's where the death penalty came from. All right? Because, is it ugly? Of course it is. Is the sinfulness of man ugly? Has it gone away? No. All right? Society has to uphold this or it falls apart. Okay? And justice matters to God. And when we allow this stuff to go on, it's actually sin in our whole nation. You see that? Now, I'm not one who just wants to execute everybody. See, people can twist their words. No, if you follow the Lord's way, everything is carefully investigated, and on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses has to be completely established, and then the whole congregation carries out this punishment, right? As you're saying, could somebody be falsely accused, and could there be a conspiracy? Yeah, there could be. That's why they have to carefully investigate. And remember in Leviticus what the Lord told them if they found out there was a whole thing about conspirators? Remember that? That was in there too. And they would get the same penalty if they were found out for being for doing that. Okay? Well, that's another deterrent, isn't it? Why I want you to see this is because the love of God is a loving society. But God knows the sinfulness and wickedness of men. So, in order for that, in this world that we live in today, we have to have harsh penalties. It's the only way. You have to have a strong system and enforce justice. If you do not, it will spiral out of control. It will always will. Right? And that's, so, but see now I should say the humanistic mind. I'll say the liberal term is the one we use a lot, but that's a political word. It's a humanist mindset. That's the difference. That we are the end all, right? And that, they think an enlightened society would never execute anyone. What? If your family was murdered, would you then want to believe in the death penalty? Yeah, would you want them sitting on death row for 20 years? No, exactly. Then you become a believer in the death penalty, don't you?
Yes, you would.
All right, so now, is there gray areas? Yes, that's why it has to be carefully investigated. And what if the person never had 2 witnesses or had the right, they wouldn't be executed. You understand?
Right.
So, it's not, some people think that just means, then they could just, everybody be executed all the time. There's no proof and no evidence. That's they were charged to take it seriously, to investigate, and they could not just go execute someone because somebody said so. Right? The whole society would take it upon themselves to investigate what happened and get to the truth. And then it is on them to deal with it. If they let it stand, then it's sin on them. Right? But do you see the wisdom of God in that? I'm trying to point out to you because I see it all the time now. Now, I'm not very old, but even I remember when I was 80s and 90s, we still had an understanding of the death penalty. Now, and everything you see and watch and everything, they're always going on and on about how, no killing is acceptable. And they think that's enlightened, and it's not true. You think Saddam Hussein should have been executed? I do. His people executed him. He slaughtered thousands of people. He let his sons unspeakable things that he did. Should he have sat in a prison and been able to, cause more problems for 30 years, or should he have been executed? What do you think God's righteous judgment would have been? Right? So, you understand that? I just want you to see that the Lord is not promoting death at all. The Lord is promoting love. Well, that can't be love. No, that's exactly what the Lord is saying. Love. This is a loving society. Because a loving society cares about justice.
Yeah, well, you kill him, then he's going to actually go meet justice.
Yes, exactly. A loving society cares about Justice. Real justice, not fake version. Okay? And that is an important thing. And you have to see that. See, some people, and that's a lot of what we're dealing with. A lot of people's mindset is a humanist mindset, and they don't even realize it. Okay? The humanist mindset comes from the standing point is this: man is basically good. See, now our government now, I won't say the name, I should just say the name right out, but whatever, you all know what I mean. It comes from that full basis of man is basically good. And that's why we can sit down with terrorist organizations and terrorist countries, and we can try to reason with them, because if we can reason with them, they'll come to the light. If they were just educated properly, they would make better decisions. They're just ignorant, or right? There's no such thing as evil. You understand? Because man is basically good. That's the humanist, that's where it starts. But see, our mindset, the Judeo-Christian mindset that the Lord gave us, is man is evil. Without God's redemption, without God's truth, we're evil to the core. You understand? And his system is always weeding out evil and not letting it stand. Right? So you see those two mindsets are so polar opposite. That's why you can't, remember, it was the humanist mindset that kept us from entering World War II. Think of how many more lives could have been saved if we got in a couple of years later. The Lord had to literally attack us. Let us be attacked so we would save the world. We were going to let them die. We were going to let England burn. You know that? America was going to let England burn. We were.
Well, they did have that intention towards us.
But come on. I mean, we were going to let England burn. We were going to let France be destroyed. We don't think about it that way because we remember what happened after we were attacked. But remember, we should have been in it years before that. You understand? All I'm just saying is, see, it's that mindset. Right? Anyway. It's a good time for a sip there. I'm just trying to get the heart of it into you. All right? That God cares about justice. Can a killer and murderer who is sentenced to death be forgiven by the Lord eternally?
Yes.
Absolutely, completely, and totally. But does that mean that then society should then, anyone that repents then should not have this carried out? No, it doesn't mean that at all. They eternally can be forgiven. Just remember the thief on the cross. We are being justifiably executed, right? He said, but the Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So at that point, he understood that he was getting what he deserved. And the Lord didn't say to him, no, man, you shouldn't have been executed. These people are horrible. Right? He was exactly right when he said that. But he had repented. He had turned to the Lord. And he was forgiven. But the judgment was still carried out. Right? And because that's about society. That's about the innocent people who were violated. It's about justice. Right? See that? And because if you don't bring justice, what happens to society? If you don't bring justice, then what happens is eventually vengeance. Isn't that true? If no justice is carried out, will somebody eventually take vengeance? And then someone will take vengeance back, right? And that's what will happen. All right. Anyway, I think I've made that point, but it's an important point. All right. Especially because the Lord has such a high value on this, because He is designing and giving them a godly, loving society, understanding the wickedness of men, not a humanist foundation. Okay. That was 17. All right, let's go to 17 verse 14. When you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you, and you possess it and live in it, and you say, I will set a king over me, and be like the nations who are around me. Moses has been prophesying this whole time. You shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses, one from among your countrymen. You shall set as king over yourselves. You may not put a foreigner over yourselves, who is not in your countrymen. So Moses is already telling you, at some point you're going to go and you're going to say, give us a king. And at that point, you better make sure it's the king the Lord chooses. And that all happens in the book of Samuel. We'll get to it. All right? But the Lord also tells him the bad parts about having a king right now. Which there's some bad parts to it. Moreover, he shall not multiply horses for himself. What? That's a smart move. Nope. Nor shall he cause the people to return to Egypt or multiply horses. You know where the best horses come from?
Arabia.
Yep. And Egypt. It's interesting that that's in there, but that's why. Okay? Since the Lord has said to you, you shall never again return that way. That was all prophecy for them, a warning for the future. 17, neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly increase silver or gold for himself. What is it all about? The Lord just warned him, he shall not multiply wives for himself. Now what does that mean? It doesn't mean, it means he shouldn't keep just having wife after wife. And you know, because that's what all kings do. And all the cultures. Well, guess what? Israel eventually does that. And it becomes, and it does exactly what the Lord says is going to happen on the next one here. Okay? This is all prophecy for the future when they receive a king, and this all happens. All right? Now it shall come about, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this law, of the book of Deuteronomy. All right? On a scroll in the presence of the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life. That's why David said, I meditate on your law day and night. Right? That he may learn to fear the Lord his God by carefully observing all the words of this law and these statutes. That his heart may not be lifted up above his countrymen, so that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right or to the left, in order that he and his sons may continue long in the kingdom in the midst of Israel. So what is that all about? Multiplying wives and horses and money will make him proud. He will become arrogant, and he will raise himself above his brothers. Does that happen to kings?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? But you see how it's all there? And it's already laid out. Can't multiply horses and multiply wives and multiply silver and gold. Which means the more of those things he amasses, the more arrogant he'll become. And he'll think he's better than his brothers. And forget that he's serving them. Right? Which of course what always happens. But it's interesting that God went right to the heart. Now, anyway, now, it's you're going to see that that means should the king not have had multiple wives? Well, the point is that David had 23 wives. But you have to remember that the issue is, you're going to see once you get to Solomon and he has 800. What happens to him?
Yeah, God,
okay?
God didn't want him to have kings to begin with, but he said, when you do have kings.
But you're going to. So he already accepts that it's going to happen. So when it happens, you better do this.
Yeah.
Right? And the point is that the more and more, because most kings, and powerful kings, in every culture in history, if you study history, read history, they amassed for themselves harems of hundreds and hundreds of women. They all did it. Okay? All of them. When you read the book of Esther, that's just, remember they had the queen, but you think, well, does that mean that he only has one? No, he has an entire harem just for him. Right? There's just one figurehead. Okay, that's how it was in all worldly cultures. Okay, but the Lord is already warning them that that's a dangerous practice and what will happen. Right, and it's right here. He's warning them that be aware of what will happen if your king starts to continue to multiply wives and gold and horses. Right, it will change him, and of course that's exactly what happens. Okay. Then 18 is about the Levites, making sure you remember them and their portion, and how there's a blessing when they're faithful to that, and it'll bring a curse on them if they forget the Levites. That it's their job to provide for the Levites, and they're all spread through the land. Verse 9, when you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you, you shall not learn to imitate the detestable things of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, which is worshiping Molech, And Baal, a lot of them did that, and it's a main practice that they do. You know what's interesting? I'll just lay this out for you. Of course, that's here multiple times, and we're going to see in the prophets how the Lord so comes against them. It gets so bad to a point where one of the kings of Judah sacrifices his son to Molech in Jerusalem. All right, and it's a last straw, and they're just destroyed after that. Then the Babylonians come, and anyway. The point is, it always seems that this is like the last step. You're asking for the Lord to destroy your culture when you go here. And you know, guess how, well, put it this way. Human sacrifice. You would think that, oh, that was just a couple of sick tribes or maybe somewhere. Well, do you know that in almost every single pagan culture and throughout all the history of the world had some form of human sacrifice? It was not just some jungles in Africa. You know, even in Fiji and in the islands and in South America, the Aztecs and the Mayans were the worst. Okay? In Ireland, the Druids, my ancestors, guess what they did? Human sacrifice. Hung people from hooks and castles and all kinds of things. All right? The Norwegians, they were famous for it. The Vikings, that's what the Norwegians, they all had to appease their gods, and it all came back to their idolic worship. So, isn't it interesting that it all went that way? You think that's coincidence? No, it's because that's the enemy's camp, right? And the thing is, human sacrifice always seems to be like, once you get to that point, then the Lord will destroy you. And a lot of times we look at all the places where witchcraft and this kind of deep witchcraft is seated are all the places that the Lord has pretty much attacked and has always cursed, never blessed. You notice that? Always, always, always. And the Lord had to, the Lord will go after witchcraft and human sacrifice. He'll attack it. Why? Because it will spread through the world. The Lord is still protecting us and saving us from ourselves. All right? But it's interesting that it always goes there. And of course, it's like the Lord's last step is what I'm saying. It's like the last point. You go to human sacrifice, and they all get there eventually. And then at that point, something's coming. All right? There's a foreign army coming or something. And of course, that happens to Israel. They eventually go there. But see, a lot of times you're wondering about what about these little, these little Asher poles and Baal worship? Is it that bad? Do they have to be wiped out? Right? We don't understand. Again, back to humanism. No, the Lord sees this as the absolute poison and cancer in mankind, and it has to be destroyed. You understand? And that is the reason why they have to be so vehement against it. And of course, it eventually overtakes them as well. And mankind always goes that way. All right? There's only two things that go all the way back to the beginning. The worship of the Creator and witchcraft. Right? And it's always been there. And there's no such thing as white witchcraft. Okay? Just a nicer version of worshiping demons. That's, great. But, it's always been there. And mankind has always been plagued by it. Okay. And is there power in witchcraft? Yes, there is. It's not pretend. All right. So anyway, look at this. When you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you, and you shall not learn to imitate that part. Verse 10. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination, one who practices witchcraft, for one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or the one who casts a spell, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. Now here's the thing. Are all those things real and possible?
Yes.
Yes, they are. That's the point. It's all the basis of witchcraft. Do we still have those things around today? Yes, we do. All right. Is it nice to call your friendly medium who's going to bring up your dead ancestor and talk to him? Isn't that nice? You see that this is, literally, it's more than just opening yourselves to the demonic. It's saying, demonic, come, take control.
Yeah.
Guess what happens when you invite demons? They come. That's every time. Guaranteed. All right. For whoever does these things is detestable to the Lord, and because of these detestable things, the Lord your God will drive them out before you. You shall be blameless before the Lord your God. For those nations which you shall dispossess, listen to those who practice witchcraft and to diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do so. The Lord your God will raise up for you. Now, this is one of the most important parts of Scripture. Highlight, underline. This is a prophecy concerning. Remember what I told you, that eventually your Christianese level will come up, and I'm going to say this line and you're going to know what it is. This is messianic prophecy. Now, does everybody in this room now know what messianic prophecy is? And right now, that's a normal part of your vocabulary. When we first started, right? Well, this is a prophecy concerning the coming Messiah. All right? And of course, Jesus mentions this specific time that Moses talked about him multiple times through the Gospels. All right? Okay. Now, this is very specific. I'm going to read through it and then I'm going to explain. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you. From your countrymen you shall listen to him. This is according to all that you asked of the Lord your God on Horeb on the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, lest me not see this great fire anymore, lest I die. And the Lord said to me, they have spoken well. I will raise up a prophet from among their countrymen like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall come about that whoever will not listen to my words, which he shall speak in my name, I myself will require it of him. Okay, and then it goes on to what happens to regular prophets when they presume and say things that the Lord hasn't spoken. What is it about? Now, Jesus constantly asked, Moses wrote about me. If you believe what Moses wrote, right? And of course, that's multiple times, but also, he asked, remember John the Baptist is asked, are you Elijah or are you the prophet? Right? And there always seems, this comes together in Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22 and many other places where there was the Messiah, and sometimes though they had two things. They had the Messiah and the prophet. And they kind of had separated that the Messiah would be more like a David-like warrior figure, and the prophet would be like a Mosaic figure. Right? But we know through Scripture, and of course in Zechariah, brings the two offices together under Yeshua, the high priest, right? That he will be king and priest. Right? And that he's both. Okay, but there's way more to it than just that. The interesting thing here is, first of all, is he's speaking the literal words of God, right? Like Moses speaks to the Lord face to face. Any other prophet doesn't, right? Moses is the only one that did. Well, of course, the Messiah will speak literally, he'll speak face to face. The other thing, too, is, look at this. According to what you asked for. Now, what does that reference with the Lord speaking from the mountain and the people hearing the literal voice of God and them being too scared? What does that have to do with this future prophet? Because that's what you asked for in that day. What are they saying? We want to speak to the Lord, but it was too scary. This is literally the Lord saying, well, I will come. This prophet will speak to you as a man speaks to a friend. All right? And he will be the voice of God that was on the fire of that mountain. It will be the same. That's what's being said here. Does everybody get the enormity of that prophecy? Is saying that this future prophet will literally be God on the mountain speaking to you face to face. Not from the midst of the fire on the mountain. That's what you asked for. See that? Isn't that awesome? Yeah. Now, could you read through that, though, and not get any of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. All right, but it's an actual incredibly important foundation of Messianic Scripture. And, of course, it's mentioned multiple times in the New Testament. Okay, that Jesus is the prophet. He is Emmanuel, God with us. Right? The fire on Sinai comes from his mouth. All right, did I make that point? Did everybody get it? Everybody understand Messianic prophecy now? Okay, good. Good, we're getting somewhere. That's a good thing. Okay, so let's go. Let's move on. Actually, I still want to read the part. Now, this is about regular prophets among them, verse 20. But the prophet who shall speak a word presumptuously, in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or which he shall speak in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. And you may say in your heart, how will we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken, the prophet shall be spoken presumptuously, and you shall not be afraid of him. This is about weeding out false prophets.
I had a question about that.
Okay.
Because some of the prophets, like you said, Moses prophesied about things that happened 500,
Yeah.
so many years later and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So how would you prove, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's true.
Yeah, false prophets can get away with that. This
Yes.
kind of happened in 200 years. not
Exactly. Well, the issue is not, there's all the things that Moses was already proven.
Yeah.
You're going to see that when we get through the prophets, the ones who were already proven as prophets of the Lord and the ones that
but I
weren't.
meant like,
I mean, because you look at Isaiah, he prophesies, Isaiah 53, all of our favorite messianic scripture, that was 700 years before Jesus.
see, but that's, so I was talking about like for us today, how would we recognize a true prophet?
Well, that's true.
Other than the Holy Spirit, I understand.
Well, we have to use discernment, and we're supposed to test. We're told to test prophecy. The prophet should test it and see and use discerning to see if it's from the Lord. And also, not everything can be tested, but we test what we can, and we discern spirits, and we also have to see the things that we can see.
Yeah.
Right? We have to test the fruit. If a person is consistently off, right?
Right.
You have to pay attention. We're supposed to test it. We're supposed to see, is the Lord really speaking? Right?
And use the body. Use the body as testing too. Something that I
Absolutely.
might not be able to see or sense. Lorraine might be able to, because me and Lorraine are close.
Absolutely.
We could
Well, I'm going to do a whole thing on this at some point soon. How do we test prophecy and what we're supposed to do, how it functions in a local church. That's all laid out in 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14. Okay, now this is a little different because in there, this is the seer who is proclaiming the word of the Lord to the whole nation, right? Instead of personal prophecy is a little different, okay? And in the New Testament, it was given, there was also room for, we were supposed to be tested and we're supposed to, but we're also supposed to grow in it, and we're supposed to learn, and we're supposed to teach about it. So anyway, Paul really deals with this prophecy in the local church in 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14, because they were really screwing it up, and he had to set them straight. All right?
Okay.
But if you're curious now, read 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14. You'll get some answers. Okay? All right. There is no exact way to test a person's prophecy after they're dead. So, but you do find out whether that person was real or not. A lot of the church had already knew that Harold Camping was a false prophet, but a bunch of people believed him anyway. Right? Well, it turned out he was a false prophet, right? But it was easy to see before that because he was telling people not to go to church, to leave churches and all this kind of stuff, all this other stuff that he was doing that was totally wrong. It was very clear. If you just followed it all the way through, you could see he was a false prophet. Well, not to mention that his eschatology was miserable. But, even if you didn't know that, the man is telling millions of people and telling them not to go to church. Right there. You should stop listening to that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why would you listen to him? So anyway, that's a perfect example. Okay? He deceived millions of people. You know that? He really did. We have a man coming here now who was one of them, who was completely deceived by him. So it's a big deal. All right? But you have to test. There was a lot of other major red flags that he was false. Okay? Not just his predictions. All right? Anyway. Now, if he's making a prediction and it's wrong, and he's just saying, this is my prediction, and okay, well, he was wrong. Well, we don't look at him as a prophet anymore. But what he did was vehemently pursue and deceive millions of people on purpose. He affected so many people. You understand? Now, he'll have to deal with the Lord on that. And who knows if it was just sheer ignorance, or if it was something demonic, or if it was just, I don't know. I'm going to leave that in the Lord's hands. I don't know. Maybe it was sheer ignorance. The Lord knows what it was, and he would deal accordingly, right? He knows. We can't get into, I can't say whether, it could have been ignorance, could it have been just, or could it have been demonic, or could it have been purposeful deceit? I don't know. The Lord knows, though. That's the time where that's where we don't, remember, we can't condemn. Right. We can judge according to Scripture was right and wrong. Him telling people not to go to church was wrong. Right? Right? Flat out. But as far as his heart motivation, the Lord is the only one that knows that. Right. He may have been genuine and just ignorant. God knows whether he was or not. Right? We don't. That's where the condemnation thing comes in. Only the Lord knows the heart. We're supposed to judge right and wrong according to Scripture on the outward. But the Lord can only see what's in here. Right? He knows the motives. He judges motives, not just actions. Right? And we can only see actions, we can't see motives. And the motives matter. Huge. Yeah. Okay? All right. So, did that clear that up a little bit, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, where am I? 19, cities of refuge. Remember I told you cities of refuge are a major deal, and the Lord keeps bringing it up. Well, here it is again. What is one of the first things? That when they get in the land, they have to have the cities of refuge, right? And what are the cities of refuge all about? They're all about innocent blood. Why? Because accidents happen, and sometimes there's accidental death. And there will always then be the vengeance of men, which will produce innocent bloodshed, right? And that's why it's such a big deal. There has to be a safe haven for a person who accidentally killed someone. There has to be. If you don't have that in place, you will have innocent bloodshed, right? Okay. And of course, again, it's the Lord teaching them about justice and righteousness. The Lord sees and wants them to understand that they need to also have in their heart mercy for the person who accidentally kills someone. That's the motives of why is what matters, not just the action. Did they mean to kill someone or not? Right? And they're supposed to, at that point, investigate whether the person had malice or forethought or whether it was an accident. And that's another thing that they're supposed to judge, and our society is supposed to judge. And we need to make that a serious thing, because sometimes accidents happen. Once we all started driving vehicles, it happened a lot. Right? Okay. Chapter 20. Well, actually, I want to read this one thing. Let's go to verse 7 of 19. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall set aside 3 cities for yourself, and if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, just as he has sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land which he promised to give your fathers, if you carefully observe all this commandment, which I am commanding you today, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in his ways always, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself besides these 3. It says they get bigger, then he'd add more. So innocent blood will not be shed. That's what it's all about. So innocent blood will not be shed in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, and blood guiltiness be on you. When we allow innocent blood with no repercussion, the blood guiltiness falls on us all. Can you imagine that? That's what he's saying. But if there is a man, verse 11, who hates his neighbor and lies in wait for him and rise up against him and strikes him and that he dies, and he flees to one of these cities, then the elders of the city shall send and take him from there and deliver him into the hand of the avenger of blood. Is there a state-sponsored executioner? Yes. Okay? And there has to be. All right? That he may die. You shall not pity him, but you shall purge the blood of the innocent from Israel, that it may go well with you. The Lord holds us accountable for innocent blood. You know how much innocent blood is being shed in our country right now? And we wonder how the Lord has given us over to a depraved mind. Has he given us over to a depraved mind? Yes. Are we being run by depraved minds? Yes, we've already received of that. Okay. Chapter 20, verse 2. These are laws of future. Now you notice all these laws, some of it is repeat, but a lot of it is the regulations for the future. Moses is not going with them, but the Lord is using Moses right now to tell them everything, every little detail laid out of the future before them, before they even go in. All right? So they're going to get all their new, and how to imply these things in their society. Chapter 20, verse 2. Now it shall come about it when you are approaching the battle. Now this is about warfare. This is laws concerning future warfare, not Canaan. See, in Canaan, it was already said by the Lord it has to be completely destroyed. Everything. But then this is law for warfare in Israel in the future. And the Lord doesn't even leave that up to them, gives them specific rules. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and all people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, is with you. Now it shall come about that when you are approaching the battle, the priest shall come near and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, you are approaching the battle against your enemies today. Do not be faint-hearted. Do not be afraid or panic or tremble before them. For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you, to fight against your enemies, to save you. The officers also shall speak to the people, saying, Who is the... And I love this. This is really good. The officer shall speak to the people, saying, Who is the man that has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him depart and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. And who is the man that has planted a vineyard and has not begun to use its fruit? Let him depart and return to its house, lest he die in the battle and another man begin to use its fruit. And who is the man that is engaged to a woman and has not married her? Let him depart and return to his house, lest he die in battle and another man marry her. Then the officer shall speak further. Now what was that all about? That is all about really looking at your men and seeing the situation that they're in. It was actually about being compassionate towards your soldiers. That's what that was about.
Yeah.
And caring about the families of the soldier. All right? Which is, they're supposed to do that. See, that was the Lord putting that in their heart already. Okay? Verse 8, Then the officers shall speak further to people, and they'll say, Who is the man that is afraid and faint-hearted? Let him depart and return to his house, so that he may not make his brother's hearts melt like his heart. And it shall come about when the officers have finished speaking to the people, they shall appoint commanders and armies and the head of the people. When you approach a city to fight against it, you shall offer it terms of peace. What? I thought they were supposed to go... No, see, a lot of people get confused. Canaan and then their future... This is about their regulations for war in the future when they are settled in their land. That's what this is all about. And the Lord gives them specific instructions. When you approach a city to fight against it, you shall offer it terms of peace. They have to do that first. And it shall come about, if it agrees to make peace with you and opens to you, then it shall be that all the people who are found in it shall become your forced labor and shall serve you. However, if it does not make peace with you, but makes war against you, then you shall besiege it. When the Lord your God gives it into your hand, you shall strike all the men with the edge of the sword. Only the women and the children and the animals and the city and its spoils you shall take for booty for yourself, and you shall use the spoil of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, which are not in the cities of these nations nearby. Only in the cities of these peoples that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, you shall not leave alive anything that breathes, including the animals. So, remember I told you that the Lord was going to separate. Once they're settled in the land, they were given a law concerning war. They always have to seek for terms of peace. Now you're going to see most of the time in war in Israel, 90% of the time they're being attacked. They're not the ones attacking. All right? But if they were supposed to always give an opportunity for peace, and if that doesn't work, then they're supposed to kill all the men. Why kill all the men? Because the men are a threat, and they make their decision to fight and not give terms of peace, right? But they're supposed to leave the women and children alive. They are. That God gave that rule. We weren't so enlightened as a society to come up with that one on our own. God already gave that one. Okay? What is that about? That's about innocent ones. Right? It's about innocent blood. You understand? The men who picked up arms are not innocent. Okay. But I love that the Lord even laid all that out for them. Nothing, they don't get to make any decisions. It's already laid out. 19, when you, verse 19, when you besiege a city a long time and make war against it in order to capture it, you shall not destroy its trees by swinging an axe against them. I always think about this.
Yeah.
For you may eat from them, and you shall not cut them down, for if the tree is of the field, for is the tree of the field a man, that it should be besieged by you? Only the trees which you know are not fruit trees you shall destroy and cut down. So God gave us trees to use for wood and trees to use for food, and we're not supposed to cut down fruit trees that bear good fruit. I always wonder about that. Let me finish it. Cut down, that you may construct siege works against it in the city that is making war with you until it falls. So what is this about? Like, I've always thought about this. This is clearly about when there's a tree giving off good food for the people around, for the animals, and for everyone. Don't cut it down. It's a people's food source. That's all. This is simply what it's about. And animals live off it too, don't they? So they're saying when there's a healthy fruit tree, you're not allowed to cut it down. Period. Leave it. I was like, the Lord would come up with a command like that. Yes, He did. He said, then there's other kind of trees which are not fruit trees that you can use for wood, but good bearing fruit tree, why would you cut it down for no reason? See, that would be harmful to all the people and animals around in the future. Because, before our modern society, a good fruit-bearing tree is an incredible commodity, isn't it? Yep. All right. We don't really think that way in our society, but if you lived 100 years ago and you had a great producing apple tree, you'd really protect that tree. You'd do the best you can to always make sure it was healthy. Right? All right. Anyway, I just thought that is just such a cool detail that is thrown in there. Chapter 21, verse 11. I am not going to finish the book, and some all of you can say, I told you so.
Yeah, I just was thinking that. I was just thinking that thought.
All right, verse 10, 21. When you go out to battle against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive, and see among the captives a beautiful woman, and have a desire for her, and would take her as a wife for yourself, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails. She shall also remove the clothes of her captivity, and shall remain in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a full month. And after that you may go into her, remember the Bible is very graphic, and by her husband, and shall be your wife. Okay? So what is this about? We look at this, and this is so foreign to us. We're so we just get all weird by it. What this is about, honestly, is love. Say, how could this possibly be love? Well, there's a battle. They have to leave the young woman alive, right? If she's left alone. You can't treat her as a slave. If you marry her, she becomes a wife in Israel. She's not a slave. You understand? That's what this is about. She's given full rights, and she's given a month to mourn. You can't do anything. You have to leave her alone, take care of her, and leave her a month, and let her mourn. And then she can become your wife, which is actually the best possible thing for her, and she will be preserved, and she'll have a great life afterwards. You understand? This is actually mercy on women here. That's what this is. But again, this is another thing. Remember, right when I told you, do not take our culture and then go and you can't do it. But this is actually the Lord giving them, teaching them respect for women, and that she should not be treated as a slave, be taken into your house and become your wife and treated as a wife in Israel. Right? And her children will be part of the covenant. I always think that is very interesting because, you look at it, the Lord gave all those laws concerning young women. But with the boys, it's always different. And of course, it makes logical sense. Boys will eventually become angry men. That's what will happen, right? It's much easier for a woman to, in this culture, it's much easier for a woman to become part of the society than for a disgruntled young man. He's much more dangerous, right? She will easily I can make up words if I want, right? Accept her in the future and be a part, whereas a young man could have vengeance in his heart when he gets older, right? And that's really what it's about. And of course, we all know that's true. All right, moving on. But I always look at that as really the Lord giving them a command so that they could see what would happen most of the time. You say, well, what would happen normally to before the modern age in warfare? What would happen to young women? You know what would happen to them? They would be raped and they would become sex slaves. That's what would happen to them. They would be that's what would happen to them. Actually, there's still parts of the world that that's what happens to them. Okay? So God gave them a rule concerning that so they couldn't do that. All right. Verse 15, if a man has two wives, the one loved and the other unloved, both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons. If the firstborn son belongs to the unloved, then it shall be in the day he wills that he has two sons. He cannot make the son of the loved the firstborn before the son of the unloved, who is the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the unloved, by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for it is the beginning of his strength. To him belongs the right of the firstborn. Now, again, this is another thing that we're looking at. This is so outside of our understanding. But again, this is the Lord saying you can't be partial. Right? You can't be partial towards one wife and take her son and give him rights over your other son. That's what this is about. Now, what do you mean loved and unloved? Well, remember, this can happen even completely without a man looking to have multiple wives, because it can happen through the law of the kinsman redeemer, right? Yeah. If his brother died, right, and she had no son, then he would take her in, and she'd become his wife, and the first son, right, would be the son of his brother, take his brother's name, his brother's inheritance, right? You remember all that? So it can happen without necessarily purposing it to happen. But you can't be partial. You're not allowed to show partiality. Your firstborn is... That was just the Lord dealing with men according to the way we are, because that's exactly what we would do. And women would then be fighting against each other to try to get their firstborn to be the one who gets the blessing. Right? Isn't that true? So the Lord already took that one away. Every little thing, he already cuts it off. He takes it away from them. They can't even do that, because he knows how we are. Chapter 22, you shall not see your countryman ox or his sheep straying away and pay no attention to them. You shall certainly bring them back to your countrymen. If your countryman is not near you or does not know, or you do not know him, then you shall bring it home to your house, and it shall remain with you until your countryman looks for it. Then you shall restore it to him. You can't even leave it and let it die. You have to take it home and take care of it and then give it back to him. Only God would come up with that, right? And thus you shall do with this donkey, and do the same with his garment, and you shall, with his garment even. And you shall do likewise with anything lost by your countryman, which he has lost and you have found. You are not allowed to neglect them. Is that a law of love or what? Does that go directly against the sinful nature or what? Yes. Imagine if we practice these things. Yep, exactly. You shall not see your countryman's donkey or his ox fallen down on the way and pay no attention to them. You shall certainly help him to raise them up. Wow. A woman shall not wear a man's clothing, nor shall a man wear women's clothing, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. I told you it was in here. Remember, I warned you. It's in here. Why is it in here? Well, because once you go that way, you're already going that way, right? The Lord is very distinct. See, we are in the transgender generation, which of course is slapping God in the face and showing the wickedness of men, which we always go, because the Lord is very clear. The Lord lacks gender. We have men and we have women, and the Lord wants us to be men and wants us to be women. You may hate that, but it's God, and if you hate that, then you hate God. Right? And it's the way it is. And of course, because we're living in that time that all lines are being blurred. No, the Lord is very clear about lines. Now we have women in the military, which I'm fine with, because modern weapons have changed it, where a woman can pull a trigger as good as a man. Right? That's only since the modern weapons has that been able. Right? But still, come on, ask any father. Does he want his daughter in war? No, he doesn't. He doesn't want his daughter in war. See, God didn't purpose women to be in war. Some people may hate me for that. Well, then you have a problem with God's, God doesn't want women in war. Now, I understand why we have it now, because there's a lot of other things that a woman can help with. Actually, even on the front lines, that's only happened recently. I'm not here preaching that, I think it's horrible we have women in the military. That's not what I'm saying. And can women be awesome soldiers? Absolutely they can. It's not about their talent level. It's about respect. That's what it's about. It's about chivalry is a biblical concept. No father wants to, now if his son ends up going to war, he'll pray for him and he'll teach him the best he can. But he in no way visions his daughter being in war. That's something women were always able to stay out of. Right? Isn't that true?
Right.
But not anymore. I wonder what would happen now if there was a draft. You ever think about that? What would happen now? What would the rules be now if there was a draft? I guess I'm the only one who thought about that. Okay. I'm just saying the heart of it. I'm not against women being, there's a lot of great female soldiers, and I completely get all that. I just want you to see the heart of God was never for women to fight in war. That was a man's job, and it's an ugly job. I don't know why you would want to be involved, right? So all I'm saying is that God is clear about roles. I grew up in a family with roles. See, my parents were traditional Irish believers. There was men's work and there was women's work. Now, I know some of us are so different because, but that's the way my family was. But my parents both were very into it. It wasn't just my father, it was my mother was very into roles. Okay? What she's responsible for, what my dad's responsible for. And see, I grew up thinking that was a great thing, always wanted it. Now we live in a culture where that's like a bad thing. That's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, is it? Most of the time what happens is men never do their role and then women end up having to do everything. That's what happens a lot of time nowadays. Right?
Yes. You're right about that.
So, you know what I mean? But the problem is my wife has always had to work. Now, our society has made it that you can barely live on one income, which I hate, by the way. So I've been the one who's given my life to cooking and cleaning and washing and scrubbing and cleaning up puke and diapers, and that's been my life. Why? Because my wife always had to work. But even though that's been my life situation, I'm not going to turn around and say that I wouldn't like roles. If me and Jen could choose right now to have traditional roles where I could make enough money and she could be a stay-at-home mom, we would choose it in a second. She would, I would, but it just haven't been able. All right? So we do what we have to do to survive. It doesn't mean that God's way isn't right. It's our society. It is virtually impossible unless you have a major top job to live on one income nowadays. It really is. So, that is just this. Now, that also shows that our society isn't that great, to be honest with you. That's not a good thing in our society. It's a bad thing. All right. Anyway, that was me ranting, but I do that. What are you going to do? Right? But the point of roles is I want us to take that back. Get that in your heart. God likes roles. God likes that a man, if there's a war, a man should go out and fight a war, and a woman can stay home and take care of her family and take care of her house. She should never have to deal with something as horrible as that. Right?
Right.
Yes. Okay. Chapter 22. Well, I already did that. Verse 5, it's right there. There's also one that says effeminate. I don't know if we've gotten to it yet. It's like, ooh, even that one's in there. Yeah, it is. Okay, verse 8. When you build a new house, you shall make a parapet for your roof, and you shall not bring blood guilt on your house if anyone falls from it. You shall not sow. Now, a lot of these are things that are from Leviticus specifically, but he's throwing out the main important ones now. And what is that about? That's criminal negligence. That's the law of criminal negligence. It was the Lord's idea that you are responsible for dangers around your house and around your property. And if you leave things in a dangerous situation and someone gets seriously hurt, it's your fault. Right? What is that about? It's about blood guiltiness. What is the parapet on the roof? You're supposed to have like little rails on the roof. That's what it's about. All right, so people can. It's safer. It's like the Lord even has that in there. Yes, He does. Okay, verse 13. If any man takes a wife and goes into her and then turns against her and charges her with shameful deeds and publicly defames her and says, I took this woman, but when I came near her, I did not find her a virgin. Then the girl's father and her mother shall take and bring out the evidence of the girl's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate, and the girl's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man for a wife, but he turned against her. And behold, he has charged her with shameful deeds, saying, I did not find your daughter a virgin. But this is the evidence of my daughter's virginity, and they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. So the elders of the city shall take a man and chastise him, and they shall fine him 100 shekel of silver, and give it to the girl's father, because he publicly defamed a virgin of Israel, and she shall remain his wife, and he cannot divorce her all his days. But if this charge is true, anyway, we know what happens if the charge is true. Listen, what is this about? Again, from our culture, we look at this and we think this is like barbaric. But in every other culture in the world before this modern age, this was a protection for women again. Because a man can just lie and do whatever he wants. Do you know in Islam, you can accuse your wife of anything you want and kill her if you want to. Under Sharia law, she disrespects you. Yes. Okay? The point here is that, now the issue is, what is the proof of virginity? Now I told you the Bible was graphic, right? So I hope everybody understands. All right? Have I already explained this? No? Okay, well then I'll do it, the graphic ugliness of it quick. Okay? I hate this part, but you have to. You can't skip that. Now, but what is amazing about it, from a creation perspective, is, even though it's graphic and this is an adult class, is the hymen was created for a blood covenant. There is no other reason for it. That's it. You know that? It's specifically there to do one thing, to burst and bleed. That's all it exists for. You think, oh, well, that was just billion years of random chance. No, that's a blood covenant. That's what it's about, and that's what this is about. All right, now, you say, well, what if she had an accident or injury beforehand and it happened earlier? Well, they would have the evidence. The parents would already have that up front. It would already be told to them. You understand? That was the parents' job to make sure they already had that chronicled. You understand? Yeah. And if she never had any kind of injury, remember, they didn't have other things, modern things that we have of ways to deal with, you know, the once a month situation, which also has muddied the waters there too. Okay, and modern OBGYN procedures. They didn't do that. Okay? I lost multiple children. My wife had all kinds of problems, so I saw lots of horrible things that I never want to see again. Yeah, okay? Sometimes I'm in there and the machines and the things that they would break out. I was like, I can't believe this happened. This is like an alien movie. I was like, no. Anyway. If you have a father and you have children, and if you have any kind of problems, you're going to see all kinds of stuff. All right? The issue is, that was a thing, that was a protection. It was a protection for this girl. So she could not be lied or defamed. Or see, if it wasn't in place, the guy could just go out there and lie. Could just destroy her and get someone else because he didn't like her.
I'm still not getting it though. Because he lied with her then, right? He took her and he lied with her.
Yes, but he's saying...
Right, he's saying that she wasn't a virgin. But
yes.
if she was
so
a virgin...
Well, I guess the detail that I didn't really want to get into, because this is the part that everybody freaks out on.
No, but I'm saying...
is the first part, when they have sex for the first time, that is
right.
part of the marriage ceremony.
Right.
And they go into this they already have this place made, and they're in there for a week, so all right? And they bring Yes, they bring the garment of the sheep to the parents.
Okay, that's.
And of course, we all freak out and our brains explode and we can't even handle it. But that was the ways of protection for this girl.
Right, okay, good. And so they held on to it for a certain amount of time.
Yes, and it was proof.
Right, that she.
And if it had already happened beforehand because some kind of injury, or if she was raped, which can happen too. Right? Then that would already be said up front and chronicled. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Or if her husband died, obviously, all those things are already chronicled.
Okay, you explained that.
And it was a parent's job to defend this girl and to watch out for her. Because some guys are untrustworthy. And under that law, the point here is that a guy can't just lie about this woman and throw her out and just get another wife.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And ruin her life. That's what it's about. Anyway, but again, it just goes back again what I said before. Do not take our culture and then try to judge this culture. It doesn't work. All right? Anyway, okay, so we went a little late, but you have to love me. Jesus said so. Okay? So we're going to end here, and please, you already finished Deuteronomy. I'm definitely going to finish it next week. So I want you to read the first 10 chapters of Joshua. Okay? First 10 chapters of Joshua, we're going to go right into it. And it's actually some really good reading. But, if you're squeamish, it's a little graphic, so be warned. Okay? Okay, good night.